Yeah, we're not doctors or giving any medical advice. This show is intended for educational purposes only, and you should talk to your doctor about any medical issues. Now, let's get at it.
Welcome to Chat the Fat, where nutrition authors Nissa Gron and TC Hale are going to break down common low-carb mistakes. Let's chat all things low-carb, keto, digestion, and more so you can maximize your results.
Hello, good people, and welcome back to Chat the Fat. I'm TC Hale, and this is episode almost 100. Nissa Gron, it's almost 100. It's not really, but it's 89, but that's almost 100.
No, it's almost 90.
Oh, almost 90 is what I meant to say. But still, it just seems like a lot, so I'm just saying.
It's actually almost 2021.
Oh,
In a few days, right?
here we go with that. That'll be cool because then everything will be back to normal once it's 2021. There's a lot of people that kind of think like, oh, everything's perfect.
Everyone thinks that, but is anything really going to change once the new year hits?
No, not really. I'm gonna get some new socks. That's about it.
Awesome. So you're already digging into Santa's bag.
Yeah. I cheat and I peek and stuff like that, so I know I'm getting socks. I don't really peek. I really like surprises. So what did you get me?
This podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's exactly what I wanted. What I was hoping instead of socks is I was hoping I could talk about when to use a low carb plan.
Yes.
Can I have that?
I gave you an entire outline about it. It's a few pages. So
Oh, okay, great. Well, let's just do that then. It's
right.
weird though. It's like we really think alike because that's the same thing I got you.
Awesome. So I did all the work, but you got it for me.
Right. Yeah. I'm a regifter.
Sounds like something my husband would do.
All right, Jason. We're on the same page.
So before we talk about kicking off your keto lifestyle with a low carb plan, I wanted to remind everyone it is almost January, and a lot of people start their resolutions in January. And after a few weeks, they start to fall apart. So that is where we are swooping in with our brand new keto challenge, which is starting on January 18th. So
Just enough time for people to say, I want to have a resolution. Oh, I don't know how to do it. Man, well, I better do a keto challenge. So that's kind of like our plan there is like we want to be able to help people that have already said, oh, never mind.
yeah, we're going to give people a chance to get started, to get their habits underway, but then we really want to help you kick keto into high gear with our keto challenge. This is the same challenge where challengers have lost up to 25 pounds in only 21 days. So it's kind of a big deal that it's coming back. I know all of our Keto Decoded members who are involved are really excited every time a new challenge comes around. So if you want to jump into the keto challenge, you can get your keto challenge prep tips right now at eatingfatisthenew.skinny.com/challenge list. You'll get on the challenge list and you'll also get the prep tips because right now is the time to get started. You don't want to wait until the challenge begins because then you might not win that $500 prize.
Yeah. So we're kind of like Game of Thrones, really, when you think about it, because like everybody who's done the challenge is so excited for it to come around again. And it's kind of like Game of Thrones where everybody just wouldn't shut up about it. And you're like, what is the big deal with the dragons? Just shut up about it already. And you're finally like, okay, I'm going to just see what everybody won't shut up about. And then, so that's what happens is when you know when people are talking about it all the time, it must be pretty good.
Yes, and that's a great comparison because Game of Thrones is pretty awesome.
Right. And it is good, but I never did watch that tiger guy thing, just to be
Wow.
clear.
Yeah, you should watch that. He's
Yeah.
trying to get Trump from pardon, so there might be like a pardon from Trump. I can't talk. He's trying to get a pardon from Trump, so there might be a part 2 coming out soon.
Oh, okay. I'll stay tuned.
Yeah. All right. So it is New Year's resolution time. So that means it's the time for everyone to take a vow to jump back into strict keto. And this will allow you plenty of time to hit your beach body goals if you get started now, if in fact the beach actually opens up this year because it's just
Still
not
broken.
one yet. Yeah. So
They're still cleaning off the sand.
yeah, you want to make sure to stay safe. So we're not sure. But if you are brand new to keto, or even if you followed keto in the past, but you're struggling to get back on track, jumping straight into strict keto macros might not be the best plan for you. So I wanted to start us off with some stats that I looked up. So it says that only 64% of those who make New Year's resolutions only last longer than the first month. So it's only about two-thirds of the people
I'm
make.
gonna say it's 2 weeks too. I mean, I like stats and everything, and I like actual numbers, but from what you actually see and like the eyeball test, most people go about 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks about that. And then so 46% of people who make resolutions are said to last longer than the first 6 months. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, I think that's okay. And what's even more easy to tell is like people going to the gym. That's the one that's like, because that January 2nd, it's like packed, and then 2 weeks later, it's like a ghost town again.
Yeah, I always hated those first 2 weeks because it changed up my routine. There was no
Right? People are in the way. Why are you using my machine?
yes. And so of the people who make resolutions, only 14 to 39% of people actually ever achieve their goal. And unfortunately, the older you are, the less likely you are to achieve your goal, since that 14% is the number of people who reach their goals that are 50 and older. And the 39% are those who are in their 20s. So the older you get, the less likely you are to reach your goal. And I know a lot of our listeners kind of fall right in between those ages or maybe even a little bit older. So that means, given these stats, you have a likelihood of 14 to 39% chance of actually ever reaching your weight loss goal.
That's kind of cool though, because I just hit 50, so I don't even need to make a resolution anymore. If I know I'm not going to do it, I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Does that come with your AARP card?
Maybe. Did you start getting those magazines already?
No, but yeah, I did get some mail at one point, and I was like, okay, that's now I'm upset. Now you just keep your own mail.
Yeah. My mom was actually excited when she started getting offered the senior discount. So that's coming for you.
Yep, here it comes.
All right. Well, I'm not sure of the exact stats of how many people actually reach their goals when it comes to keto. I'm guessing it's probably close to those averages, which it sounds a little bit crazy because there's definitely a lot of keto success stories that we often hear about. I know I personally am a keto success story, but it took a long time to get there. Before I found success with a low carb lifestyle, I struggled to reach my goals for decades. So I was definitely in that 14 to 39%, or that the opposite, that 60% or more of people who never reached their goal because I was always so strict when it came to rigid diet rules. So I don't, like a lot of people, I always started off every new diet with the best of intentions, but I usually fell off my plan within those 2 weeks, like you said,
Right.
maybe by the weekend. Sometimes I wanted to get started, but being hungover never let me get started. So yeah,
Right. And the thing is that the intention is always just to fall off the plan just for today. Because that's the intention is just, well, I'm just going to fall off of it for today. But then when it comes tomorrow, then it becomes, well, I fell off of it yesterday. I might as well fall off of it today. And then, well, this week is jacked. So I might as well just start again next week. And well, I screwed up last week. So I might as well screw up this week. And it just kind of becomes easy to continue that situation.
yeah. And if you're not a screw up like that, like I was, sometimes you can lose more weight. Like there were times that I lost 20 or 30 pounds with low carb plans, but because I didn't go about it the right way, they were always hard to stick with. And then, once I'd go off them, the weight would always come back and it would come back faster than I took it off. So it wasn't really until I quit that all or nothing diet mentality that a lot of dieters have, and I finally stopped being in a rush to hit my weight loss goal, that I finally realized if I wanted to not only lose weight, but actually keep it off, I had to start following low carb as my forever lifestyle instead of just following strict keto because that's what's popular. Instead of following that as a way to hit my goal as quickly as I could, and then mentally wanting to go back to the old habits that actually led me to weighing more than 245 pounds in the first place.
So let's not just breeze over that so quick, because I think that's a big thing. Kind of talk for a second, like what made you decide that, okay, I don't need to be in such a rush? Because I think it's people's desire to be in a rush that really screws them over. Because when they don't get that result that they want the 10 pounds in a week. And when they don't get that, they think that they're doing something wrong and they either change it or they quit. So how did you get to where you're like, okay, I'm just not going to be in a rush?
I think for me, I didn't really have a choice because I was in a different stage of my life. I was a mom, I had a baby. So, before I had a baby, I had time to obsess about dieting and following the rules and working out nonstop. And once I had a baby, I didn't have that luxury. Like, I only had so much time in the day. So, I really had to do the things that worked and do the things that I could stick with instead of like constantly researching new diets and constantly trying to find a new strategy that every dieter knows this. When you start a new diet, you have to go out and buy all new foods and clean out your cabinets, and it's a big hassle. It's a lot of work. So, kind of just where I was in life.
That's good.
Yeah. So once you start looking at something as your lifestyle and not something where you're gonna, rearrange your life every time you start a new diet, but you're just gonna, keep the habits in place for your lifestyle, that's when it starts to get easier.
Right.
So, a lot of people listening might be asking, why would you start with low carb when you could just go big with keto? Because you can get results with low carb. I definitely did. But when I went keto, I did get faster results. So, why do you think someone should start with low carb when they could just pick keto right away?
Well, let's start with our biggest ones, which is always the two biggest ones are if their digestion isn't working correctly and if their bile is not flowing or they can't break down proteins correctly. Going keto is going to be really difficult for those people because the keto is going to include maybe, it's a moderate protein diet, but it still might be more real food protein than most people maybe have been eating. But carbs are just easier to digest. So when you remove those, if your digestion isn't working well, you're just left with things that are hard to digest and you're going to feel miserable. So that's the first one. And that's the biggest one. And if you're having any digestive symptoms, um, constipation, diarrhea, bloating, acid reflux, uh, acne, that's actually a digestive system in many cases. What am I forgetting? If food just sits in your stomach like a rock, or if you get nauseous, that's a big one, especially with fats. So any of those symptoms, then you want to take our almost free digestion course. Just go to kickitnaturally.com/keto digest. And that'll walk you through how to understand what's going on, what are those symptoms telling you, and how to fix it. So that's the biggest one. Because if you're dealing with that, keto is going to be very difficult to the point to where you're probably going to quit and you're probably going to gain weight too. So that's not the goal, right? That's not the resolution is to quit or gain weight.
Definitely neither one of those are.
Right. And so the second one would be if your mineral levels are too low, which is usually most commonly from digestive issues and an inability to break down the food and pull the minerals out. So those will usually go hand in hand. But if you look at your blood pressure and that systolic number, the top number on the little blood pressure machine, if that's under 112, then that's an indication that your minerals are too low. So starting going right into keto in either of those situations physiologically are going to make it very difficult and usually will lead to failure or cussing.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just cussing, but most times it's failure too. So those are the two physiological is reasons. What are other reasons that you think that somebody should really focus on mastering low carb before they go keto?
Um, a big reason is mentally, it's just hard because we're taught, most of our lives that we should be eating all the carbs. And so that's what you learn to eat. So part of it is you just don't even know what to eat. So all of a sudden, one day you're eating a high carb diet and then you're like, I'm going to cut my carbs and eat all this fat. And then you just do it and you're like, all right, now what do I eat?
Right.
So if you're at least keeping some carbs in your diet, before you go keto, you'll have an adjustment period. Well, you'll be learning while you're doing because anyone can read about keto, but it's actually doing it, the actual like taking the actions that's going to help you get results. It's not just learning about it. So I think getting in there with a low carb plan can help you take some actions while you're still learning.
Right. And that's an important point to understand is that once you're in a good groove of keto and you're doing it correctly and everything is going well, what do I eat actually becomes a lot easier. And once you understand the foods to eat and recipes to make and find some things that work for you, it actually becomes a lot easier. So don't feel like it's always harder, but the transition when you don't know how to make keto foods, that's the difficult part. It's just that learning process.
Yes, and if you're doing keto the right way, there's a lot of new foods that your body has to get used to. Like a lot of dieters don't like vegetables, and I'm not saying that you have to eat vegetables if you follow keto, because there's a whole carnivore section that doesn't even eat vegetables. But if you want to follow keto and you want to eat more vegetables or more fats like coconut oil and butter, and you're not used to that, it can take some getting used to. So putting those into your diet while still keeping some carbs in there might be helpful and give your body a chance to adjust. I don't know why I can't talk today. It'll give you a chance up. It'll give your body.
Hold on, it's fine. We'll start over. Hey, welcome to Chat the Fat.
I think it's too close to the holidays. I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
Yes. So your
Well, let me
body.
just give you a chance to say it, a body, a mouth, give you a chance, a mouth to, let me just give you a chance, a mouth to get it right.
We're totally getting a 1-star review after this podcast. So anyway, your body will have a chance to adjust. Did I say that right? Yeah. Okay. Once you're starting to incorporate these foods, your taste buds will start to enjoy them more than when you first get started. Because I know that's one thing I hear a lot is people don't like the taste of coconut oil. And once you start including in your diet, like I personally started including it while I was still following low carb. And by the time I was keto, like I couldn't even taste it. It just tasted good.
Right. You just adapt and it's a nutrient. Oh, my body needs that. And your taste buds change. Another thing that's big is that people will feel like, I don't like vegetables. I don't like fats. I get nauseous if I eat them. Well, when you fix digestive issues and you can actually break those foods down correctly, all of a sudden they're not rotting and fermenting in your system and you don't have that problem. So if you need to fix digestive issues, and you're concerned, oh, I don't like those foods, once you fix the digestive issues, you'll likely like them.
Yes, and I wanted to mention that even if you followed keto before, and you're not brand new, so you know how to get into ketosis, you know which foods to eat. Sometimes it's best still to start with a low carb plan first, just to get back into the swing of things. And you don't always have to rush to get into ketosis because you can still have results with low carb. And this is especially true if you're coming from a very high carb diet. You don't have to drop below 20 carbs per day to see results. Even a lot of people, if they drop to like 100 or sometimes even up to 150, you can still see results like that and not feel quite as miserable.
Right. And just think about it. Like we like to see anybody starting keto kind of start off more of like 25 carbs per meal, not, 20 carbs per day. We like to see them cut down to per meal for at least a few days to just start allowing your body to, oh yeah, I can remember how to burn fat while insulin levels are lower. And you give yourself that opportunity to start allowing your body to make that transition before you're really making the transition.
Yes, and that moves us right along to my next point about how to start a low carb plan. Because a lot of people, they're not actually sure. There's a lot of confusion with low carb plans. I know a lot of these studies that say low carb plans don't work as well as cutting calories or low fat plans, and that's because a lot of times those studies don't actually show low carb plans. They'll still show plans that have like 200 grams of carbs in it, which are less carbs, but it's not really the low carb plan that's going to get you results. So
Right.
how would you
They're viewing low carb, as compared to what normal people are eating.
yeah, so if someone's eating 200 grams of carbs compared to 300 grams, that's going to be less, but it's not necessarily low carb. It's still bringing in a lot of carbs that's going to keep your insulin high.
Right. And also when you're looking at studies, we don't know, was the person able to digest it at all? Were they using, like vegetable oils and all these other toxic ingredients that are in a lot of the foods that we buy in the store? You don't get to see, here's a study where everybody used real food and they were able to digest that food. Nobody's doing that study. So that's what we like to see people do. And it's just a different world than, cutting your carbs by 100 grams a day.
Okay, so how do you suggest people should start a low carb plan?
Kind of like we just said. I want you to just rewind for like a minute and a half and then do that.
Yes. But see, I think what you recommend, so people should bring their carbs down to about 25 grams of carbs per meal, which is exactly how I start it. But I probably didn't start the way that you suggest because I was at a place where I was still eating a lot of junk food because I was just always about, sometimes I did follow low carb, but I was always about the calories. It always came down to the calories. So when I first started, I was 245 pounds, couldn't get any weight off, and I was still eating a lot of junk food on the weekends. So the way that I would start it is I just start it where I was. And if I got like a beef sandwich with fries, that's a typical Chicago fast food meal out. Maybe I would just eat the beef and like a handful of fries and maybe even a little bit of the bun if I was really craving that. But the way that I did it was I just started eating less carbs, but starting where I was at. Like I didn't just throw away all the food that I ate and opted for veggies and meat for every meal because I would have completely failed like that. So, having a sandwich for lunch, but only eating one piece of bread and maybe a small handful of chips, adding in a little bit more healthy food like cucumbers or carrots at the time was helpful for me to start to help my body to adjust. But I think a lot of people just try to go all in all at once. And I think that's a quick way to fail.
Right. And you look at what you did and it worked for you, but you didn't continue to do that long term. Like that was your way to transition into doing things a little bit better, right?
Yeah, and that's what I mean. So I, would still eat, and I wasn't eating beef sandwich and fries every single day. This was like a weekend treat. So during the week, I would try to eat better meals. But if I was craving some chips, I would still have a few, but I would just keep the carbs under 25, and that's how I got started. But then I would try to transition to healthier choices. So to skip the chips completely and, start eating cucumbers and dip instead or switching out any of my higher carb favorites for something that was lower carb. And it wasn't necessarily like all these people in these keto groups say that's not keto, you can't have that. And I wasn't eating a lot of foods that were considered keto at the start, but that gave my body a chance to transition. And the longer I did this, the better I ate and the easier it got.
Right. And for a lot of people, if you look at what you're eating in a day, and if it's Pop Tarts and then cinnamon rolls and Hot Pockets and things like that, any type of improvement is going to create improvement and possibly weight loss for a lot of people, especially initially. But then if they continue on that path, if I'm just having if I'm having half a Pop Tart and half a Hot Pocket, you're not really taking the right steps. And that success is not going to continue for most people. Most people need to, as they get used to this adjustment that they made, they need to continue making more improvements towards more real food, and at least having part of the day where insulin can come down so the body can access stored fat.
Yeah, and so that's what I was doing because if you are eating Pop Tarts and cinnamon rolls, obviously those carbs are going to be much higher than 25 carbs in a meal. So that's where you want to really start counting. And one easy way to help you start counting is to track what you're eating in a journal. And so there's a lot of people out there, they're following low carb and they think because they're choosing foods that are labeled as low carb or keto friendly that they think they're just low carb. But a lot of these processed foods, so if you're switching over from the complete junk food to the keto processed foods, just because they're labeled low carb, that doesn't mean that the carbs won't start to add up. So, part of how you can figure out if you're really eating under 25 carbs in a meal is to start tracking what you're eating in a journal.
Right. And, I think we've talked very recently that I wouldn't, take on an obese client at all unless they were willing to food journal and such. And I think that it's such an effective tool that I wouldn't even play with anybody unless they're willing to do that step. I really like that you made the new food journal so it makes it easier for people to kind of follow that. And they
Yeah,
can get that on Amazon now, right?
Yeah, I think it's the 28-day keto transformation journal. And it's basically the tool that helped me really stay on track is I vow to track everything I ate, no matter what it was. Cause I know when you're on a diet, if you eat something that's not on your plan, you don't really want to write it down because it's going to make you feel bad. But that's part of it is writing everything down, even if it does make you feel bad, because you're going to see what you're eating and that will help you make better choices. So I had a thicker journal, and I vowed to write down everything I ate, no matter what it was. And that really helped me stay on track. And it really helped me lose a pretty significant amount of weight for the first time ever. But not only that, it like kept me going.
Right.
So I made that journal with everything that I kept track of and everything that helped me. So if you want to get that, you can get that on Amazon. But it is important whether you write in a journal like that, or you just write in a notebook and you just like keep it with you and write everything down. Now, when you were working with people, did you care if they like actually did a handwritten journal or if they tracked in like a macro app? Did that matter to you?
It depends on what kind of client it was. If it was just a personal training client and I was just kind of, guiding them with their food a little bit, then I didn't care what it was. If I was looking at their physiology and wanted to see their self-test numbers, then I wanted them to be on the coalition where they could track. I could help them track the self-test numbers as well. So that was always the case. If they were like a full-on nutrition, physiology self-testing client, then I made them do that because I wanted to be able to watch it. But otherwise, I didn't care if they were writing it in crayon. I didn't care if it was on a stack of Post-its. I wanted them to write it down to where they could see it. And if they brought me a stack of Post-its, that was annoying. So I would end up buying them a journal to write it in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because that's a question that I get often when it comes to tracking is people want to know, well, I already track in a macro app like Chronometer. So is it okay that I just do that? Or do you want me to actually write it down in a journal? And I think it is important to track in Chronometer so that way you know what your macros are. But I like it better when people actually write in a journal because there's something about that that like helps you connect it better, than just, write than typing it up in an app because it's so easy just to like type in the same things every day, and it's great to see that, but sometimes like especially if you're writing down how food makes you feel or things that will keep you on track, it's just sometimes better to handwrite, and
Right.
there's been studies that show that it's more effective.
I
So
have seen that quite a bit.
yeah, so I think it's up to the person, but if you're really trying to figure out which one to choose, I think handwriting in a journal is the better option to go with.
Hmm.
All right. So we say that people should eat about 25 grams of carbs per meal for most meals starting out. So, how many carbs per day do you think someone should eat on a low carb plan?
Well, what I really like to see when somebody's transitioning is, and I see this because when they're starting to go low carb, what they really want to see is they want to see something happen. They want to see weight loss happen. They want to see their measurements go down or something, um, because that's very motivating. And the most effective way to do that is actually to have an extended period of the day where insulin can come down very low and the body can access stored fat for fuel. So this becomes a really important thing. So I like to see people do what I teach in my books is the 3 p.m. carb cutoff, where you're having lower amounts of carbs for breakfast and lunch. And then by 3 p.m., you're done with carbs other than things that you would get in like green vegetables and stuff like that. So I'm not as much giving them a number unless they're transitioning to keto. Then I do the 25 grams per meal since I know that the plan is to go to very low carbs for the entire day. So when that's the plan, I go with the 25 per meal. But when they're just going to, maybe they need to do low carb for a longer period of time, I don't usually look at it that way. I just want them to have a stretch of time where it's from 3 until the rest of that night, plus the whole time they're sleeping. That's often 12, 15 or more hours that insulin can come down and the body can access stored fat and burn that for fuel.
Now, do you think that varies based on chemistry? Because I always did better if I ate lower carb early in the day. So, like, just had bacon and eggs for breakfast and then a really low carb lunch. And then if I did have a meal that was a little higher in carbs, it was always easier for me to do it later in the day.
Right. And I do kind of explain that too. And it can make it a little more complicated, but it really just works just as well. Actually, having your carbs just at night and not at all in the morning is actually more appropriate for your natural circadian rhythms. So I'm fine with that one too. Just maybe a person only has some carbs at dinner and they don't have any in the earlier part of the day. And when I say, low carb, some people are going to do great with very low carbs and then no carbs after 3 p.m. But some people need to do more of what we call medium carbs. If their blood pressure is really low, they may need a little more carbs for at least part of the day. Maybe they're doing more, sweet potatoes, butternut squash, yams, and berries and things like that, that might be more than 25 grams in a meal. Um, but if they're done eating the carbs by 3 p.m., they still do okay because they had some carbs earlier in the day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's just helping them bring their blood pressure up and helping them feel better so that they'll make better choices later in the day.
Right. And they won't have such horrendous cravings.
Yes. Yeah, so we're basically saying, just do probably 2 meals where you're doing 25 grams of carbs, and then either your breakfast or dinner, whichever you prefer, whichever's easier for you, to do less carbs. So just green veggies, meats, fats, things like that. What
Hmm.
about snacks?
Um, uh, Snacks, it kind of, again, are you on a medium carb thing or are you on more of a low carb thing? If you're on a medium carb thing, maybe some berries kind of thing, that kind of snack is going to help out. If you're not, then you might want to stick more to, like, cheese and protein kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's what I always found helpful, like, keeping my snacks probably under 15 carbs, and, most of the food that you eat, just keep it as close to real food as possible. That's always gonna help you if you're avoiding the processed foods as much as possible.
Right. And when you snack, you don't want to have something that's carbs only, not a snack that consists of mostly just carbs. You want there to be proteins and fats in there to kind of keep you from having a sugar spike and crash.
Yeah. And now, a lot of people get confused. So they're lowering their carbs, but they want to know what they should eat when it comes to fat and protein. Is there a specific amount they should eat, or to eat how they like to feel a certain way? What do you think about that?
I don't usually do that. I don't know if you do that when people are doing low carbs, but when I'm doing more of a low carb situation, I usually don't give people a protein number or a fat number. Um, I do more like body for life kind of thing where your protein is the size of your palm, palm of your hand. I want to do anything I can uh, to simplify things if they're having to count their carbs or really watch that. If they're having to do one thing different like that, I don't want to give them everything different. I want to make as many things as possible more simplified. So protein is an area where, with low carb, you don't have to worry so much about protein going too high in most cases, and as long as you're reasonable. Uh, so it's not something that I usually talk about. Do you talk about that when people are doing more low carb?
People want a number. They're trained to want a number.
Right. And that's why I start off in my book telling them to shut up about that. And I talk a lot about you're gonna have to shut up about that, kind of a thing. And a lot of people find the ability to get past that.
I I think being in the diet world for so long, I was trained to want a number, not specifically about how much fat or protein to eat, because I would just eat enough to feel good. But for me, it was always a calories number. And now I know better. Now I know that calories aren't really as important as a lot of people claim them to be. But when I was following low carb, I still kind of stayed in a calorie range. So I know, like, a lot of times when we have our keto challenges, I'll give people calorie ranges because they want that number, but I always tell them to eat to satiation, even if they're going above that number or below that number. Um, so I kind of just use like a generalized number to be at, just because people need to know. Because a lot of people, if they've been dieting their whole lives, they don't really know what it feels like to be satiated. They kind of forget.
Right. And the biggest point that I think that you had to start doing, and I really like a lot, is that a lot of people aren't eating enough. And they kind of need to look at that number just to make sure that they're not going too low. I think that can be more important than anything.
Yeah, that's actually why I started giving people macros during the keto challenge, is because I found so many people still weren't eating enough. And even if they say, I'm not, I'm really hungry, what can I eat? Like, they don't want to eat, they're scared to eat. Even though you tell them you can keep eating fat, you can eat more protein, they're just scared to eat because they're so trained to eat such low calories for so long. Or sometimes even if they're full, and we don't tell people to eat past feeling full, but sometimes you still need to work your way up and continue to eat more over time, because you just need to eat more. Like, a lot of people just need to eat more than they already are.
Right. And I still don't have a number. Is that what you're saying? Because the other thing that's confusing about those numbers is it's this amount for your body weight and all this kind of stuff. Sometimes it's not really about your body weight. Your body, it does not dictate the amount of protein that it needs according to your body weight, because your body weight may fluctuate between muscle or fat. There's a lot of variables in there that can dictate, and your ability to even digest that protein. Can you break it down? The number you eat isn't going to matter if you can't break it down. So there's a lot of things in there, um, where I just don't get too specific with it.
Okay. And do you have any specific exercise recommendations for someone when they first start following low carb?
I do if your blood pressure is really low, because a lot of those folks seem to be the NISA, mini NISAs, where they want to work out 17 hours a day, every day. And why are you talking to me? I need to work out. So when that's the case and your blood pressure is low, I need you to try and figure out how to do that less, because you're creating stress hormones by using up all of your resources for this workout when your body already doesn't have enough resources. So you really got to get blood pressure up if you're wanting to exercise a lot.
Okay. And I think that's important because I think a lot of people who do exercise a lot are probably in that low blood pressure state and they don't even realize it. And
Right.
they just want to keep exercising because they're told that's what they need to do. And also, exercise can make you feel good. So not only are you told to do that, but now you want to do that.
Right. So it's a tricky thing. And if a person's seeing results and things are going well, and they're not losing muscle by over exercising and all this kind of stuff, then they may have enough going on. I'm talking about people who are not going to check their blood pressure and look at their physiology. But you really want to look. And if things aren't going well, you really need to look and see what's going on, so that you can determine, okay, my blood pressure is too low, so I am making a mistake. I should correct that mistake.
Yes. And so we already kind of hit on digestion. How do you know when it's time to adjust from low carb to more strict keto macros?
I think a lot of this is, how are you feeling? You know, um, how are you feeling as far as are you feeling satiated, and are you getting really hungry between meals? That kind of thing. Uh, i- if you're keeping your insulin level low, and at least part of the time, your body is able to access stored fat and burn it for fuel. So you have this backup fuel source. And that means your body's starting to burn fat well, and you can probably, make a transition pretty easily. Uh, but if you drop your carbs for part of the day and then you scream at the mailman because you don't like the color of his shorts, then you might not be quite ready. You might need to do some more work in lifting your electrolyte levels, fixing some digestive issues, and helping your body get what it really needs.
And I think
What else?
part of what goes along with that is also when your cravings start to improve, which is going to happen when you start working on your chemistry and your digestion. But if you're still having really strong cravings for carbs, it's going to be really hard to switch over to keto.
Right.
Okay. So what else? Is there anything else that people can do to make the adjustment from low carb to keto even easier?
Let's hear yours.
Let's hear mine. Well, there's definitely, you have to figure out the right keto approach for you because keto is kind of a broad word now. Like it started out, I think, as a specific diet, and now it's grown into so many different sectors. Like there's high protein keto, high fat keto, carnivore keto. There's
Fake
all
food keto.
different.
There's not really do keto. And then there's just get yelled at in the support group keto.
Lazy keto, real food keto. Like I feel like kind of like on that Forrest Gump movie where that guy was
Uh-huh. Popcorn shrimp, bubblegum
shrimp.
shrimp.
That's what I feel like. But there are different kinds of keto,
I was
and
in that movie, by the way, just so you know.
you are.
Yeah, I was a extra in that movie. I was when I first went to LA to do stand up, and then they got there and like, "Oh, we don't pay comics here." I'm like, "What are you talking about? I've been getting paid for years." What? Like, yeah, but everybody here just wants to be seen. Nobody cares, so you have to figure out another way to make money. So then I just went and I did extra work in movies.
I'm about to make you feel really old right now because I remember watching that movie when I was like 12 with my parents
Right?
moved
Yeah.
here. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So anyway, yes, so there's many different kinds of keto, and the reason that there's so many different approaches because different approaches work for different people. So instead of just forcing one approach and trying to make it work for you, you have to take time to figure out which approach is actually the right one for you. Um, so you'll definitely have to do some testing with the various forms to figure out your keto sweet spot. But we don't want to make it a big guessing game for you because that's when a lot of people are going to start to get frustrated and give up. And so that's exactly the reason that we hold the quarterly keto challenges that we talked about because we want to help people start to figure out the right keto approach to follow so that way they see success with keto right at the start because no one wants to go into a plan where they start gaining weight, which a lot of people do on keto, or where they're losing like a turtle. So, if you're really trying to figure out keto and you really want to make it easy, I suggest jumping into our 21-day challenge.
Yeah, and it's good because the best part about the whole challenge thing is it's great because there's some structure and there's a lot of people and you get to hear from others what they're doing, what's working, what's not. But the best thing about the challenge is you get to ask questions when you get stuck because most people get stuck and they don't know what to do and maybe they just I'll just do this and then it doesn't work. But the best part is being able to ask questions and getting feedback from, us as well as others that are in the group and others who have done 3 or 4 or 5 challenges and have the experience and all that stuff.
And I think the best part is not really the questions that you ask, but the questions that other people ask that maybe you didn't even know you had. And, until you
Mhm.
start seeing the answers, you didn't even think to ask that, but it's going to make your plan easier. So I think, the whole point in this episode is to just get started right now. Start with low carb now. So you give your body some time to adjust. And then when you're ready, you can start to shift over to keto. If you happen to be ready by the time our keto challenge starts in a few weeks, it's really a great experience to help you build your momentum because we provide group coaching to everyone so everyone can start to figure out the right approach for you, not some approach that someone's trying to shove down your throat in another group. So definitely, if that interests you, we are going to kick off our next keto challenge on January 12th with our Commit to Keto Masterclass. So, if you are interested in learning what our challengers know to lose, a lot of them lose like 10 pounds or more during the 21-day challenge, then you can come join us for our masterclass to learn some of the tips that a lot of them didn't know before they got started.
Right.
Um, so you can join us for that masterclass, but make sure you're on the list. You can get on that list at eatingfatisthenewskinny.com/challenge list. Once we open up registration for that masterclass, you will be the first to learn. And in the meantime, you will get our keto challenge prep tips. So that way you can take all this information we're giving you in this podcast and the prep tips, and you can get started right now.
Cool. It's going to be fun.
All right. Well, that is what we had to say this week. Next week, we will be back to talk about sticking to New Year's resolutions because even though we'll already be into January, some people are already falling off track.
Come on, people. Let's last more than 2 weeks. We can do it.
Whether you're brand new to keto or just looking to move past roadblocks, join us for our next Troubleshooting Keto Master Workshop. Go to chatthefat.com/workshop to find upcoming dates and register for this totally free event. You just might find your missing piece of the puzzle. Until then, we'll see you next week on Chat the Fat.